So we come to the end of our reading through the chapter of John 6, the Bread of Life discourse in the Gospel according to John. And the disciples of Jesus say about his teaching of his body and blood that it's a hard saying. I think sometimes as Catholics, because we kind of grow up in it, we just take it for granted. This is the Catholic teaching. Jesus is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, and we believe it, so it's hard for us to get a conception of what it must be like for those to hear these words when they don't already have that faith. Right? When I read John 6, I get excited. I say, here it is. There's nothing hard about it at all for me. And perhaps we've maybe reduced the mystery so that we treat the Eucharist as an object, a fact that's already in our minds, and we don't actually contemplate the gift. Jesus says, does this shock you? What if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? So you see, he puts it in exactly the opposite relation that most of us would. He says, if you think the Eucharist is shocking, you should be all the more shocked by our faith that Jesus, the second person of the Most Holy Trinity, became a human being, gave his life for us upon a cross, was raised on the third day, and ascended to the right hand of God, the Almighty Father. But we treat all these things as facts. And so we no longer get the shock value that's in it. They are great mysteries, things which we do not comprehend with our intellects, things that we learn to love with our hearts, that we contemplate every day of our lives. Now, I do have a quibble with this translation. Does this shock you? Does it scandalize you? That's what he says. Does it cause you to stumble? Now, there's two senses in which we talk about scandals. The sense here in this gospel is Jesus uses it many times throughout the other gospels. It's the hard teachings of Jesus that cause people to pull away from him, right? It's all the teachings that we could list them. The teaching about abortion, the teaching about marriage, the teaching about divorce, the teaching about homosexuality. All of these are hard things. And for the reason of these teachings, many people pull away from Jesus. They're too hard to accept. There's a second sense of scandal, and it's the way that we most often use the word. We mean some horrible kind of thing, something that smears a reputation. And if you were here last week, you heard me talk about what we're going through. I won't go through the details again. Our second reading gave us that image from St. Paul of the only bride of Christ, spotless, immaculate, without stain, wrinkle, spot, or blemish. And therefore it is scandalous when her members, and particularly her clergy, do things so horrifying that you can no longer see the beauty of Christ's only spouse. That's a scandal. Jesus knew about these scandals too. He tells us about it in the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 18, verse 7. It is necessary that scandals come, but woe to the man through whom they come. He knew it from the very beginning. At the very end, Jesus doubles down on his teaching. He doesn't back off. He doesn't soften it. He lays the truth right out there. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life, but there are some of you who do not believe. Jesus knew from the beginning the ones who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And so Jesus, after many of his disciples decide on account of this, even though they've seen the healing of the sick, They've seen the multiplication of the loaves. They proclaimed him to be the prophet. They wanted to make him king. On account of this teaching, they no longer follow him. Jesus does not call them back. Now, Jesus doesn't want them to go away. But if you walk away from the truth, he will let you do so. He's not going to change the truth to fit our sensibilities. The truth is what it is. And so Jesus then turns to the 12. Do you also want to leave? And Simon Peter gives us the answer, which might be the most perfect answer in the world, both to the scandals of hard teaching and hard to believe things, and to the scandal of the sins of the members of the church. Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life. Where else can we go? There is nowhere else I can go to receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. There's nowhere else I can go to have my Jesus and his gospel and his sacraments. So while at times when we go through tough things and struggle to understand, we may even have the desire to want to go. Notice Peter doesn't say, hey, I completely understand your teaching. We're with you, Jesus. We get it all. Nope. He just says, there's nowhere else to go. That's the right answer. We leave off the end of this gospel, the very last verse. It's verse 70 of the 6th chapter of the gospel according to John. Jesus says, following Simon Peter's words, did I not choose you, the 12, and one of you is a devil? Jesus knew from the very beginning that amongst even those he chose to lead his church, there would be devils. I have nowhere else to go. I will not leave Jesus on account of one devil. I will not leave Jesus on account of 1,000. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.